Best Indie Album. And now this is definitely one of the hardest categories we had this year. This is going to be a conversation and a half. We have Fetch the Bolt Cutters by Fiona Apple, Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers, Shores by Fleet Foxes, Fake It Flowers by Biba Doobie, and The Ascension by Sufjan Stevens. I'm gonna go backwards to the top, not in any particular reason, but just because.
So The Ascension was interesting for me from Sufjan Stevens. The first listen, I did not like it that much at the beginning because first off, I had no idea what to expect from him. I wasn't quite familiar with his music and stuff. But when I started listening to the song Video Game a little bit more throughout the year, and then I got really dove into the album later on, I was like, oh my god, this is a masterpiece. It's very, very eclectic, and there's a lot of different sounds in there. It took me a long time to get used to and appreciate it. Now, since it was released in late September or so, yeah.
Yeah,
I've listened to it a lot. There's gorgeous songs.
There's absolutely beautiful songs like Ativan, this mental health kind of angle song to it. Gilgamesh, Death Star. I think Lamentations is a really cool, almost Kid A experimental kind of song.
The Ascension, it's self-titled. It's fantastic as well.
If we had any complaints about it, it was just really a lot of overwhelming sounds.
And it's long. It's an hour close to an hour and a half.
Yeah, an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah,
it is long in that regard. That was my other gripe, but there's a lot in here that is amazing. And for indie this year is on a tear of doing so much good because there's a lot of folk blend, there's a lot of rock blend, there's a lot of electronic blend. There's so much in indie that is going on that is really the scene that is doing the most, I feel like, of trying to push music as forward as it can go.
And we have to shout out our conversation where you correctly predicted that rock is dead unless indie comes around and changes it. And we had a lot of Biba Doobie, who you also called on Audioface as being a really big star. Blew up because of TikTok, but also TikTok also blew up because of her own right. And you called her a year and a half ago. Her release Fake It Flowers this year, phenomenal.
You can do it in between. You can make it indie or you can put it in rock category. Honestly, you could put it in either or because it's basically straight up. It's like an homage to 90s grunge, but pushing it a little bit forward. And for someone who's still a teenager, I believe, is
barely she's in her early 20s,
or she just turned 20, is ridiculously good. And for her first full LP too, she's only released little things here or there, kind of small EPs. It's amazing. It's one of my favorite rock things to come out of the year.
She's definitely released an album's worth of music, but goes to show there's a certain work ethic that goes to creating music like this.
The Japanese House last year. Yeah,
that absolutely pays off. Really good thing. We did a bonus episode on Biba Doobie, so if this is just the first time you're hearing about her for some reason, go ahead and check that out, and as well as our review. Of course, we talk about all these albums way more detail in our reviews, for sure, but speaking of, for sure, Shores, that's a bad segue.
Sure.
Fleet Foxes. This was a really kind of folky rock experience. This is one of the finest albums, capital A albums, I've heard this year, where it just plays through very nicely.
It's our favorite thing is telling a story throughout an album. It's just going top to bottom. Everything putting into it, you can put in a shuffle, and everything still somehow flows, which is
writing through emotions in a way that makes sense to transition through those emotions.
And Shore is ridiculously good. I've always liked Fleet Foxes a lot, but my thing with Fleet Foxes is they were almost like Tori Moi, where they would make a 15-song album, 12-song album, and 9 of those songs would be ridiculously amazingly good, and 5 of those songs would be kind of out of place or a little bit too folky or a little bit too experimental for it. But this album is literally top to bottom, everything goes along. There is not one song out of place. There is nothing that needs to be done, and I've listened to this album 1,000 times since it's come out. Really, really good work from them.
Yeah. Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers was quite an album. It did a really good job of setting you in the concept of a really kind of dark setting. There's aspects of dissociation and decaying relationships and things like that. But it just keeps the tone and keeps the idea of it.
Yeah, I've had Kyoto on repeat a lot. That's a fantastic song up at the beginning of the album. I like it because it's this is like the tried and true indie sound of like pushing that rock, bending genres into that, and doing much for like pushing it further as much as you want and everything. And there's so much in here that I really enjoy, and it's nice to see Phoebe Bridgers like going up and even going on to other people's stuff, like with Kid Cudi, which is a random feature. I'm like, what the hell? But showing how much good work she's done the year, and this album is amazing. I've heard it so many times throughout the year because it came out earlier, and it's just really, really good. I enjoy it. And last not least,
Fetch the Bolt Cutters by Fiona Apple. I mean, like, if rarely has any band, like maybe like since like the Arctic Monkeys, just sort of shown what you can really do with rock in this year so well, creating a piece that is really kind of bare bones with the instrumentals, but also plays with instrumentals and sounds that you wouldn't traditionally hear put together, creating its own sort of unique spin on things. Fiona Apple just does this really phenomenal solo, in most cases, like rendition with her vocals. It's just very powerful, very strong.
Yeah, it reminded me of like the Tranquility Base Hotel Casino style, like stripping back a lot of stuff, but still putting a lot of different layers onto it and simplifying everything to make something that pushes forward. And it's ridiculously good. A lot of people have this on like their top the albums, just albums in general,
album of the year
categories.
Like
a lot of people have it because of how good it is. And it is. It's grown on me. It is something that I normally wouldn't enjoy per se, but it's something that I've appreciated, and as someone who does a podcast now to do it, like we try to give everybody fair chances. This is one of the albums I'm really happy we have the podcast for, because I normally wouldn't have come across it as much. And it's really good.
Decision time.
Fuck. I don't want to, because all of these in their own right can be indie album of the year. It's just ridiculous.
I can narrow it down to 3.
Okay. Who do you? Which 3?
Biba Doobie, Fleet Foxes, and Fiona Apple.
And Fiona Apple? That's fair.
No offense to the other 2.
They're fantastic.
But like we said, we just gave them a lot of praise. We have to narrow down.
Fuck.
Can you at least get rid of 1 for me? Or like narrow it down to 2?
It would be between Fleet Foxes and Fiona Apple by far to me, because they're the ones that are the most complete album works to me, top to bottom. Fair. And they do my favorite thing, is storytelling and experimenting and stuff. As good as B2BB's album is, I don't think it's as good as those other 2, but they're like literally neck and neck as much as you can.
I'm gonna slightly edge out and say Fiona Apple. Yep. I just think like as a one artist kind of like mostly show, kind of putting it together.
It's very good.
And just the instrumentation is so unique and so clever.
No one has really done that sound this year that much. Like you hear people trying to do it per se, but not doing it in the right way.
It's just her own shit.
But it's her, exactly. It's very unique and overall fantastic.
Fucking well done, Fiona Apple. Fetch the Bolt Cutters, well deserved for Best Indie Album, Audioface 2020.
Yes.